With urgency in every step, Paul tore away the old floorboards of his grandparents' farmhouse, driven by a mysterious hunch that whispered of hidden secrets. As the last plank gave way, his eyes widened in disbelief at the sight beneath. The glint of something truly historic, long buried under layers of dust and time. What was this artifact that had lain forgotten, and how had it come to rest here? His heart pounded with the thrill of discovery, knowing that this moment was about to rewrite history. As Paul hauled the old, stained carpet off the dusty floorboards of his grandparents' farmhouse, he could hardly believe he was about to unearth a mystery hidden for decades. With each tug, the fabric surrendered more of its secrets, layers of dust rising like spectres into the fading afternoon light. This wasn't just spring cleaning. It felt like a farewell to the past, or perhaps an unexpected greeting to a new chapter in his family's history. "Need a hand there, Paul?" called Mr. Henderson, the elderly neighbour, leaning over the fence. His voice was tinged with curiosity, no doubt piqued by the rare sight of activity at the old Mackenzie place. "Just digging through memories, Mr. Henderson," Paul replied, offering a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He turned back to his task, his hands moving with a mix of hesitation and necessity. As the last corner of the carpet came up, his fingers brushed against something unexpected. A metal handle, set flush against the wooden floor, its presence a silent invitation to secrets below. Staring at the handle, Paul felt a chill despite the sweat on his brow. The house had always been full of stories, but none had hinted at a literal buried past. His heart pounded with the thrill of the discovery and the weight of responsibility. What lay beneath the floorboards of the farmhouse where he had spent so many childhood summers? The question hung in the air, as tangible as the dust motes dancing in the shafts of sunlight piercing the dim interior. Without hesitation, Paul whipped out his phone to call Kingsley, the only locksmith he trusted to handle what could be a delicate or even dangerous task. As the ringtone echoed in the quiet room, he paced, his gaze never leaving the mysterious handle embedded in the floor. "Kingsley, I need you over at the old Mackenzie farmhouse," Paul said the moment the call connected. "There's something here that needs your expertise." Interest piqued, Kingsley arrived within the hour, his tool bag clinking with the promise of solutions. As he stepped into the dimly lit farmhouse, his eyes quickly adjusted, and he knelt beside the handle, examining it with the precision of a seasoned professional. "This isn't just any handle, Paul. This looks like a trapdoor mechanism, possibly leading to a safe," Kingsley murmured, running his fingers along the edges where the wood met the metal. He pulled out a flashlight and a small mirror to inspect the locking mechanism further, angling the mirror to catch a glimpse of the internal components through a tiny gap. These safes were built to be hidden and secure. They're not easy to open without the right tools. Paul watched, fascinated, as Kingsley unpacked his bag, revealing an array of specialized tools. Tension wrenches, rakes, and picks gleamed under the flashlight's beam. Each tool was selected with care, used for a few moments, and then set aside in an orderly fashion. Kingsley's hands moved with practiced ease, manipulating the lock with a gentle, precise touch. The locksmith paused and glanced at Paul. "These old safes can be tricky. They weren't just designed to keep people out. They were designed to keep them out forever. Let's hope this one wants to open up and tell its secrets." With renewed determination, Kingsley attached a dial indicator to the face of the metal plate, watching the needle closely as he felt for the slightest movement within the lock. Minutes stretched into an hour as he methodically applied various techniques, his brow furrowed in concentration. The sun began to set outside, casting long shadows across the wooden floor, making the golden dust motes swirl in more dramatic spirals. The room was silent except for the soft clicks of the lock and the occasional creak of floorboards under their shifting weight. Finally, with a click louder than any before, the handle turned under Kingsley's steady pressure. He looked up at Paul, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. "Got it," he announced, his voice filled with the excitement of victory. Together, they pulled the handle, and the floorboard lifted, revealing a dark opening beneath. Kingsley shone his flashlight into the revealed space, the beam illuminating the edges of a ladder leading down into the darkness. Paul peered over his shoulder, his heart racing as the light flickered across something metallic at the bottom of the safe. Stacks of what appeared to be old, carefully wrapped items gleamed back at them. The air was thick with anticipation as they prepared to descend into the hidden chamber, the secrets of Paul's ancestors waiting just below the surface, untouched by time until now. What they found next would rewrite not just their family's history, but potentially that of the entire community. Descending into the narrow opening, Paul and Kingsley were met with a cool draft that carried the musty scent of decades past. The beam from Kingsley's flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating a small, waterlogged chamber below. As they reached the bottom, their boots splashed in the shallow water covering the floor, the remnants of a long-ago flood that had seeped into the safe. Kingsley held the light steady as Paul began the painstaking process of extracting the items. His hands trembled slightly with the mixture of excitement and reverence for the artifacts his grandparents had deemed important enough to hide away. The first item he pulled out was a leather-bound coin collecting book from 1937. Its cover was bloated with moisture, the pages within remarkably preserved beneath layers of protective plastic. Each page cradled a variety of coins, their faces clear and distinct despite the years. "Look at these," Paul murmured, carefully turning the pages. The coins shone under the flashlight, some bearing the faces of forgotten political figures, others depicting long-past events. The realization that he was holding a piece of tangible history was overwhelming, and a sense of connection to his grandfather deepened with each coin he uncovered. Further into the safe, they found more coin books, each as meticulously maintained as the first. Paul's excitement grew as he recognized rare Indian headpennies and mercury dimes, items he'd only seen in collector's guides. The narrative of his grandfather's passion for numismatics, previously just bedtime stories, unfolded into reality right before his eyes. Amid the stacks of coins, Paul's fingers brushed against soft, water-stained bundles of dollar bills. He carefully unwrapped the first bundle, revealing silver certificates from the 1930s, their edges softened but still intact. "Kingsley, these are incredible," he breathed out, awed by the resilience of the paper. As they continued, the safe yielded more than just coins and bills. Silver bars, wrapped in oilskin, gleamed dully in the artificial light. Their engravings indicated purity and origin, speaking of a time when physical assets were a family's lifeline during economic uncertainties. "This is too much for me to handle alone," Paul said, reaching for his phone with hands grimy from the safe's contents. He dialed his cousin Mark, who lived just a county over and had always been fascinated by family lore. "Mark, I need you here. You won't believe what Grandpa hid under the floor." As he explained the situation, Mark's eager agreement crackled through the phone. "I'll be there in an hour," he promised. With help on the way, Paul and Kingsley carefully moved the last few items, including a series of neatly tied packets of newer currency. As they unpacked these, a series of $1 bills bearing the signature of Joseph W. Barr came into view. Paul paused, his pulse quickening. Barr notes were rare, issued during a fleeting term as Secretary of the Treasury in the late 1960s. The implications of such a find, both historically and financially, were profound. As they laid out the Barr notes, the safe's secrets continued to unfold, each layer revealing more about the depth of his grandfather's collecting instincts. Paul felt a profound connection to his past and an overwhelming responsibility to preserve these legacies. The discovery of the Barr notes, in particular, promised to add a significant chapter to his family's already rich history. With Mark's arrival, the task of sorting through the waterlogged safe became less daunting. Mark, wide-eyed with curiosity and enthusiasm, joined Paul and Kingsley in the dimly lit basement, eager to assist in uncovering more of their grandfather's hidden treasures. As they delved further into the safe, Mark lifted a tarnished silver bar, turning it over in his hands. "Paul, do you realize what these are? Your grandpa was really planning for the worst, huh?" he commented, referring to the economic tumult that likely inspired their grandfather's collection. Paul nodded, feeling a growing admiration for the foresight his grandfather exhibited. They continued to carefully extract and examine each item. Paul felt a deepening connection to his grandfather, understanding now his passion for history and preservation. As they arranged the coins and bills, Paul explained their historical significance to Mark, who listened, captivated. "This one here," Paul pointed to a particularly old coin, "is a buffalo nickel. See the date? It's from the early 1920s. Grandpa once mentioned how these were almost minted out of existence." Each coin seemed to carry a story, a fragment of the past that Paul had only ever glimpsed through his grandfather's tales. The meticulous way these collections were preserved spoke volumes about the man who had gathered them. Each item was wrapped with such care, likely touched last by the grandfather Paul remembered as a storyteller, not just a collector. He wasn't just saving these for value, Paul mused aloud. He was saving pieces of history, each coin, each bill telling a part of a story he wanted to remember. Mark, who had been carefully documenting their finds, looked up from his notes. "It's like he left us a treasure map, not just to wealth, but to understanding him, and maybe that time." Their exploration continued, the afternoon light waning outside as they unearthed more hidden gems. It wasn't just coins and currency. More personal items began to surface. Among these were several small, exquisitely detailed pocket watches and a collection of military medals that had belonged to their great-grandfather. Each piece added depth to the narrative of their family's past, weaving a richer tapestry of their heritage. As they reached the bottom of the safe, Paul's hand brushed against what felt like a loose panel at the back. Curious, he tugged at it, and to his surprise, it shifted. Behind the panel, they discovered a hidden compartment that contained another, smaller safe. "This one's different," Kingsley noted, examining the new find. "It looks newer, might be from the 50s or 60s. Different kind of lock too." The revelation of a second safe piqued their curiosity further. What more had their grandfather hidden away? Was this a continuation of the same collection, or something entirely different? As Kingsley set to work on the new safe, Paul and Mark exchanged a look of excitement and anticipation. The air was thick with the promise of more secrets to uncover, each layer peeled back revealing more about the complex man their grandfather had been. This second safe, hidden even more carefully than the first, suggested that whatever lay inside was of exceptional importance to their grandfather. The prospect of what they would find inside kept them rooted to the spot, eager for Kingsley to unlock yet another door to their family's mysterious past. As Kingsley manipulated the lock with skilled precision, the tension in the air mounted. The new safe, encased within the wall behind a false panel, hinted at contents even more secretive than those they had already unearthed. Paul and Mark watched intently, barely breathing as the final click echoed through the cramped space, signaling the unlocking of hidden stories yet to be told. With a reassuring nod from Kingsley, Paul pulled open the heavy metal door. Inside, the safe was meticulously organized, its contents neatly arranged and preserved. The first items that caught their eye were several beautifully maintained pistols, each wrapped carefully in waxed cloth as if cradled in time. Paul carefully unwrapped one, revealing a Colt revolver, its metal still gleaming under the dim basement light. "These are from Grandpa's collection," Paul said, his voice filled with awe. Mark leaned in closer, his interest piqued by the historical firearms. "Looks like these could be from as far back as World War II, maybe earlier," Mark speculated, examining the intricate craftsmanship of another pistol, an 1873 Peacemaker. Imagine the stories these could tell. As they delved deeper into the safe, their exploration revealed not only firearms, but also a stack of banknotes tucked away beneath the guns. These were not ordinary currency. Each bill bore the signature of Joseph W. Barr. Paul's hands trembled slightly as he recognized the name. "These are Barr notes, Mark, from when Joseph W. Barr was Secretary of the Treasury for just a month," he explained, his voice tinged with excitement. The significance of these notes lay not only in their age, but also in their rarity. Barr's brief term resulted in a limited number of these bills, making them a collector's dream. The bills were remarkably well preserved, each one encased in protective paper that had shielded them from the elements. Paul and Mark carefully laid the notes out on a makeshift table, their faces lit by the soft glow of the flashlight as they admired the collection. "This must be worth a fortune," Mark whispered, almost afraid to speak too loudly, as if the sheer volume of his voice could disrupt the delicate balance of history before them. With the discovery of the firearms and the bar notes, the safe had revealed not just monetary value, but a deeper connection to historical events that shaped the nation. The presence of these items in their grandfather's hidden arsenal opened up new avenues of inquiry and speculation about why he had chosen to keep these particular items so securely locked away. The revelation of the bar notes in particular posed new questions about their value and their place in the broader narrative of American history. What had inspired their grandfather to collect these notes? What did he know about their future significance? As they pondered these questions, Paul and Mark realized that the journey through their grandfather's past was far from over. Each discovery not only provided answers, but also unraveled new mysteries, weaving an ever more intricate tapestry of their family's legacy. Intrigued by the historical and potential monetary value of the bar notes and the firearm collection, Paul knew these treasures warranted professional evaluation and care. He and Mark spent the following days contacting historians, museum curators, and currency experts, arranging for careful examination and appraisal of the collections. As experts visited the farmhouse, each brought with them a sense of awe and reverence for the items unearthed. A curator from the National Currency Museum, fascinated by the bar notes, offered insights that deepened Paul's appreciation for his grandfather's foresight. "It's quite rare to find such a well-preserved collection of bar notes," she explained, her eyes scanning the crisp bills. "Your grandfather must have understood their future significance." Paul listened intently, his decision weighing heavily on him. The possibility of selling the collection for a considerable sum was tempting, given the financial strain of maintaining the farmhouse. Yet, with each expert's visit, his emotional attachment to the items and the stories they told grew stronger. "I can't believe Grandpa kept all this hidden away," Paul said to Mark as they catalogued the last of the silver coins. "It's like he was preserving his own little piece of history, not just for himself, but maybe for us too." Mark nodded, equally moved. "It's more than just money, Paul. It's about preserving his legacy." Their preservation efforts extended beyond professional advice. Paul and Mark spent hours in the farmhouse's attic, where Paul had set up a temporary conservation workshop. They followed the experts' recommendations on how to handle and store each item, using acid-free materials and climate-controlled storage solutions to protect the fragile paper and metals from further deterioration. As the days turned into weeks, the significance of preserving the farmhouse as a family heritage site became clear. Paul realized that selling the items could finance necessary renovations to the house, transforming it into a place where the public could appreciate his grandparents' legacy. However, his heart tugged at the thought of keeping the collection within the family, turning the farmhouse into a private museum where future generations could learn about their ancestors' lives and values. After much deliberation, Paul made his decision. He opted to keep the most personally significant items and donate a portion of the collection, including some of the bar notes and several firearms, to the National Currency Museum, ensuring they would be preserved and appreciated by a wider audience. As he walked through the now empty safe room, Paul felt a mixture of relief and doubt. "Did I make the right choice?" he wondered aloud, the echo of his voice in the cold, barren space serving as a reminder of the weight of his decision. Yet, looking back at the farmhouse, rejuvenated with the proceeds from some of the collection and bustling with preparations for its new role as a private museum, Paul felt a profound connection to his roots. He envisioned his family's history living on, not just in dusty books or hidden safes, but as a vibrant, tangible part of the community. His decision, he hoped, honoured both his grandfather's intentions and the legacy he aimed to preserve. The weeks following Paul's decision transformed the old farmhouse into a hive of activity. With renovations underway, each room began to reclaim some of its former glory. The roof was repaired, windows were replaced, and modern heating was installed, making the space welcoming once again. In the living room, where his grandparents had entertained countless guests, Paul set up display cases for the preserved treasures, each piece meticulously labelled and secured. As the grand reopening of the farmhouse approached, Paul took a moment to step back and observe the fruits of his labour. The walls, once peeling and neglected, now bore fresh paint, and the floors shone, reflecting the care he had invested in preserving this piece of his family's history. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction knowing that he had found a way to honour his grandfather's legacy while keeping the family history alive and accessible. The day of the reunion brought together generations of Paul's family, many of whom had only heard stories of the old farmhouse, but had never seen it in its newfound splendour. They gathered around the displays, their voices a murmur of excitement and curiosity. "Can you believe all this was just sitting under the floor?" one of his cousins asked, gesturing towards the collection of coins and notes. "It's like stepping back in time," another replied, her eyes wide as she examined a set of old photographs Paul had found among his grandfather's belongings. Paul joined them, sharing anecdotes and insights he had learned during the preservation process. "Grandpa really was a collector at heart," he told them, pointing to the detailed logs he had kept of each item in the collection. "Every piece tells a part of our family's story." As the day turned to evening, the house filled with laughter and reminiscing. The family felt closer, bound by the shared history they were now a part of. Paul looked around at the joyful faces, his heart full, knowing the farmhouse was no longer just a structure, but a living museum of their collective heritage. In the quiet that followed the reunion, Paul reflected on the journey he had undertaken. It had been a path of discovery, not just about his grandfather, but about himself and what it meant to be a steward of history. He turned to the camera, a final thought in mind. Sometimes the greatest discoveries lie hidden in familiar places, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. What forgotten stories might your family home contain? His voice was inviting, encouraging others to explore and cherish their own histories. Share your tales of unexpected discoveries in the comments below, Paul concluded, a smile playing on his lips as he imagined the stories that others too might uncover.